Good morning, everyone, and warmly welcome to our EEX Journey info session. I'm very excited to see you all here this morning. My name is Elisa. I'm a morning person and I'm an entrepreneur. And today with me from EEX team is Tapio, who is roasting our alumni speakers, Heini, Eevi, and Noora, who are moderating the chat. To kick off this morning, I'm curious how everyone's morning is going so far. So please share your current mood in the chat by using emojis or GIFs. So let's start to practicing the chat. While you're choosing the right emojis, I'll just quickly remind you that since we are using Teams, please keep your cameras open and microphones off until the Q&A session. And if you have any questions in mind, just comment on the chat. We'll get to your questions after the discussion with the alumni. Looking good. A very energetic morning for you all. All right, so let's look at the program. First, we'll cover what EEX Journey development program is, very shortly. Then we'll get to the most exciting part. Two of our alumni and EEX community members will share their experiences, their own learning stories. And finally, you can ask questions from Etti and Ilkka. And we hope that by the end of this program, you will have a better understanding about our unique leadership development program and how you could benefit. But now, our founder and inventor, Tapio, please go ahead.
Good morning to everybody. I'm Tapio. Happy to see you all here. Our mission is very simply to make the world more entrepreneurial. We focus on the largest companies and organizations. And this is because we need to develop our transformation capabilities. We need to transform. We need speed and accuracy to both to save and improve our businesses, our organizations, but also to work and combat like the biggest issues like the climate crisis. So we think that every leader, as a matter of fact, every leader needs a shot of entrepreneurship, and this is what we do. We need entrepreneurship to be more courageous about new stuff, experimenting, pushing through all those failures till success, to innovate and work in general, to work the future. This is what the entrepreneurs do. So what do we do? We form advisory boards out of the best people in the large organization. EEX comes from the Entrepreneurship Exchange. So we place large organization leaders from very different organizations to work with startup entrepreneurs for 1 year. So one team of 4 to 5 people, leaders, focus on one startup and helping it for 1 year. They focus on the startup's practical strategy work. In startup, it is very, very practical. And now we are focusing on sustainable startups. So what you have is a real sustainability-driven startup that either develops a successful business or dies. It's a wonderful place to see how the business is being developed. And some of our people are talking about the transformative effect of seeing this kind of a real case from the startup's point of view. And with this, the effect we want to achieve for the largest organization, is the change in the mindset and drive for growth and transformation. So this is what we do. Here is a quick glance to how does it look over the year. We have joint events or reflection, but the main body of the work is done with your own advisory board, with your own 3 or 4 other advisors helping directly with the startup entrepreneurs. Our advisory boards are currently meeting roughly every 3 weeks over the course of the year. And that's the program or the skeleton of it for the next 10th round of EEX Journey program. So that's the very brief intro on what we do. Now I would like to introduce you to our great alumni so that you get to talk to them directly. Etti is a very practical but creative business designer. She's working with KONE WORX, which is a marvelous organization, a global innovation unit at the KONE Corporation. These guys are doing very advanced, very avant-garde innovation work with the customers. Etti is very driven. I've known her for a while now. She's very driven and always brings new ideas to the table. We have also here today Ilkka. Ilkka is with VR, which stands for the State Railway. He is a very analytical leader, comes with the job probably. He is responsible for the strategy and the future, also some of the mergers and acquisitions. And are you still the CDO? You have lots of hats, Ilkka. Or did you hire a new CDO?
Not currently, only for the last 6 months. But
okay.
we were lucky to be able to hire a new one.
So Ilkka has been responsible for a broad range of development for one of the key logistic companies in Finland. Welcome to both of you. Let's kick off. I would like you to share very quickly about your experience in the EEX program. Would you like to start, Etti?
Yeah, sure. First of all, can you hear me okay still?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, so a year was really interesting. So totally virtual due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But actually we were able to get pretty structured way of working throughout the year. So we planned the whole year in the very beginning of the journey. And it might be even that the virtual environment kind of helped us to be structured. Part of the EEX journey, I was based in Singapore. That didn't bother either, so we just scheduled the meetings to suitable times. And I met really exciting people, both from the startup side, but then obviously from the advisory board side as well, and really eager to meet all of them one day face to face.
Thank you, Etti. Ilkka.
So our experience started right before the COVID-19. So we were able to have some meetings all together, the whole EEX group. And then I think we had maybe 2 of the steering groups already face to face. But then there came this COVID kind of a thing, and we moved to virtual, which changed quite a lot of things, and we had a lot to learn how to discuss with each other and try to work in an environment that rapidly moved to Teams and Google Chat and that kind of things. And we truly had a lot to learn from each other. So I think it was a really enjoying journey anyway, even though we needed to move to a virtual space.
Yeah, I think that sums it up. It was a very tough year for all of us and for many of our startups. But would you like to tell very briefly, because I know that the audience is probably interested, tell me a little bit about the startup you were advising, you were working with, Etti.
Yeah, so I was advising a startup or a scale up actually. So searching for growth and moving towards the international market. That was their main driver for the year. So Emmi is a digital marketplace, RaaS, so meaning recycle as a service. So marketplace where buyers, sellers, and then quality clothes are actually coming together, and so you can basically put your old clothes there, and they can then find a new owner from there. We had a really ambitious team, really value driven, behavioral change driven. So they wanted to make a change in the world. So it was really inspiring to have a chance to be part of that and contribute to it as well. We had a really wide background also on the startup side. And as I mentioned, they were searching to go. They were already in few markets in the Nordics, but they were looking at widening it as well. But finally, at the end, they didn't go in more international. They insisted on staying and searching for growth on the local market due to the COVID-19 pandemic. But that's the main target for the future as well. And as I mentioned, this startup was more on the scale-up side, which was pretty interesting as well. So searching for growth.
Wonderful. Ilkka, can you tell a little bit about SteerPath?
Yes, we were advising a company called SteerPath that was kind of scale up as well. Or in the beginning, it was I think they were second year in a row in this EEX Journey program, so they were really satisfied for the whole thing. And with Tuomas Ilola, CEO, and the others, they actually when the year began, they were offering digital workspace solutions for office, campus, and hospitals, like indoor positioning and that kind of things. But actually, the market changed quite rapidly during the COVID-19. So we had a chance to discuss really interesting and innovative ideas. And at the end of the year, they started to offer those space hub kind of a framery boxes for people that you can fit two people in the same framery box, and you use those as a service, for example, from the large shopping malls and such things. So it's a really interesting company and the business, and it was possible to change the path really rapidly because the environment changed so much, and basically the whole company transformed during that year. So we had a really exciting chance to be part of that.
Great. Yeah, you had to pivot very hard, and it was wonderful to see how you guys worked it out together. Can you, Ilkka, continue and tell us a little bit about your advisory board, your mates, how you were working with?
Sure, we get people from really different backgrounds. Somebody has a strong finance background, and then there were more technology people, and so we had it was really interesting to hear different viewpoints, and we had wonderful discussions around the topics we had, and people were really positively minded. So we learned from each other a lot. The structure in some of the meetings were really structured, and some of them were not that much. Were more of like kind of an idea generating things. But it really depends on the CEO and on the chairman of those meetings, that how would you like to arrange them. I think for us, both of them worked pretty well, that they were really structured one and not that structured one. But I think the main point was to discuss open-mindedly and try to learn from each other and try to get some new insights for the startup as well.
Great. Etti, you had also very diverse advisory board, right? How do you feel about it?
Yeah. So as it has been stated many times, so it's learning from the startup, but learning from the other advisory board members as well. So obviously in the beginning, you're using quite a bit of your strengths. But then when you get used to and you're kind of building this psychological trust in between the advisory board and the startup, you're actually then starting to feel comfortable going out from your comfort zone as well. So you're starting to advise out of the box as well. And then the discussions are pretty interesting. I would be prepared, like in the advisory board, to let the discussion flow to unknown directions as well, so that it's not super strict to the agenda. That gives freedom as well. But we had pretty structured way of hosting our advisory board. So we nominated the chairmen and the secretaries in the beginning of the year, and then they had also the responsibility, the chairman, for example, to call to the startup and ask for how they're doing, and then even share that information in advance for the rest of the advisory board. Really variety of backgrounds and really kind of open-minded as well. So.
Yes. And if I may add to that, I think what worked best for us, that we selected some themes for the meetings. That, for example, there were one or two themes for each of the meetings, and we were pretty open to discuss around those. But without those themes, it would end up possibly even too open-minded. But having those, I think we were able to give value for the company.
But this is interesting discussion, because one of the things when you're developing something new or working strategy, and you both know this very well, is that how do you balance the structure and then the more freewheeling, more open discussion? Because if you think, Ilkka, you guys had to do a major pivot. I mean, if you structure everything throughout for the next year, then how do you think something? So you're out of your company box, and then the startup has to think out of the box as well.
Yeah, we were actually we decided some themes beforehand, but it happened that they changed right before the meeting. That okay, the world has changed. We need to change as well. So this is not relevant anymore. So let's bring in the sales director as well and have some discussion around the new prospects.
Yeah, and then I have to also add to that startup works really fast and in an agile manner. So there might be even some kind of a really urgent situation ongoing in the startup at that point, and they can't really focus on the topics that were on the agenda. So what you as an advisor then can is just to react on the situation, so to say, and trying to support in a best possible manner for that specific. So for example, there might be a pitch approaching suddenly to an investor or something like that, and obviously they need your input to that at that time. So you can't predict the future, but you can react quickly to changes. So that's what you can be, and you can be supportive there as well.
Yeah, definitely. We got plenty of those, that there were some investor round coming up or some really big clients coming up. So we moved on to sparring about those.
Yeah, and then on the other hand, what challenges this brings that you have so multi-dimensional or multi-diverse team is that it takes time in the beginning to learn the business of the startup, and for each individual it takes different amount of time. So kind of spending time to understand what are we actually advising and what are we capable to bring into the table. So that's a learning throughout the year actually, and it takes quite a bit of time and patience as well. So
yes, there's lots of learning involved, and this is something we always try to highlight to the new crowds coming in, that you have to reserve time for learning. And this also plays out to the program length. And this is why we do this for almost a year, because you guys need to learn the startup before you can start working it full. But Ilkka, you work strategy for a living for a big organization. And then in a startup, you have to do strategy decisions and moves for the 1 week to another. Is it that different?
No, basically the fundamentals are not that different. Of course, the like how rapid the speed is. Of course, that depends heavily on the situation and about the funding and all that kind of stuff. But basically the same fundamentals still apply. That you discuss about the possibilities and different options, and then you pick up want to proceed. So in principle, I don't think it's that much different, but it's more and more about the challenging the fundamentals really often that you don't do. Even though we, as a corporation, we're on a rolling strategy process anyway, so we do everything. We can do strategy steps every quarter or month or so, but it's still the speed and the ability to completely pivot your business in a really short time. That's something that you definitely don't discuss that often in the corporate world.
That's true. Etti, you guys also, when you do innovation, that's also a very condensed strategy situation. You don't necessarily talk about strategy, but that's what it is when you're trying to figure out the new stuff, right?
Yeah, and I think there is quite a lot actually similarities then I can relate to. So we have really fast agile teams that can move easily and pivot to the direction and so forth. So that's actually why we'll build a separate organization from the mothership, so to say, that we're able to do this. And personally, I really do think that strategy can be agile as well and iterative as well, so to say. And I think that it is getting more difficult when the ship is big to change the course, so to say, but it's possible, and you have much more manpower there as well behind. So then on the other hand, change is always possible.
That is true. But if you think about this trust issue, somebody mentioned, and this is one of the latest feedbacks, was that okay, that the advisory board is actually better than being on the board of directors. And some of our entrepreneurs have been talking for years that this advisory board is wonderful because you guys are totally neutral and independent. They're just to help. But then somebody pointed out that on a board of directors, there's a certain agenda, there's governance issues and all that, which you do not have on the advisory board. So what do you think of the idea that the advisory board is actually better for learning?
Well, if I start, I've never been on a board of directors myself, so it's hard to compare. But what I can tell is that you don't have that kind of a package or the responsibility to that extent in an advisory board. And then on the other hand, it's kind of a dilemma throughout the year as well, that what are you actually able to advise? So what are the things that you can actually give a comment to? and then what kind of things the startup brings to the advisory board as well. So if there are really detailed day-to-day issues, for example, it's quite hard to grasp what's the root cause and what's there behind. But what the advisory board can bring into the table are key, like tools, for example, or methods that could be used to solve that specific problem. So not the content itself, but actually kind of processes or structures and so forth. So what I'm trying to say is that it depends on the context, that what are you advising, that how deep are you actually able to go, because you don't know that business that well. The startup knows what they're doing. So
hopefully.
Well, you know, they're learning as well. So they know better than the advisor, at least, because they've been building the startup. So
yeah, I agree with you on that. And I've been in the board of directors for some internal daughter companies, but I think the official board of directors work, that's more structured in a way that you need to discuss about the investment and financials and so on. But on the advisory board, you can go actually deeper into the business and just try to be innovative and creative, and even do kind of real-time decisions. That, for example, we were innovating that space hub kind of things, and we were during the advisory board meeting, we were editing the live web page that introduces the new services, that it changes really rapidly, like click and then you're live already. So it's pretty different than for the board of directors. You usually, like, the management brings in some ideas for acceptance or for discussion, and in the advisory board is more like open discussion around the learning.
But but this also relates to the fact that you, both of you, and we always place people out of their own industry. And some people think that that's very difficult. You can't advise a startup which is not your industry. On the other hand, it's I don't know how often you work out of your own industry and get really out of your box and the comfort zone. How do you think about this and advising completely different industry startup?
I think it's really exciting that you need to understand that you're not an expert on the certain topic we're talking about, but you can still bring in new ideas and learn from the others. I think it's just more of kind of that you need to understand your role, and then try to do things based on that you need to understand what you don't know, and so then what's the focus on the discussion and your insights.
I have to totally agree that understanding what you can advise, and then trusting also that, I mean, the startup has the responsibility to make the actual decisions then based on the information that they have. I think it's a strength to have so many different persons in the advisory board that has different backgrounds. So it's not so everybody are there kind of in a new situation anyway. So then you have the feeling that you're in it together already from the get-go. So I think it's an asset for a startup, and startups. I've been actually an advisor for 2 different startups. Both were out from the current business area where I'm working at, and both of them were saying that this is an investment from their side when it comes to time, that they're spending time with the advisors. So kind of bearing that in mind as well.
And the time issue is actually a pretty good one. That is from both sides. It is investment from them and then investment from you. That if you don't invest the time and focus on the meetings and even think about those beforehand, then you don't get that much out of it. Not you and not the company either.
Yeah. We see a very high commitment level from you guys overall. I mean, this has been wonderful for us. We're helping the startups, and we feel responsible for both ways. And it's wonderful to see present company included, but also the others the commitment levels are very high. But you mentioned two particular points, which Ilkka, you said about that when you look working out of the industry, you have to think carefully what you understand, what you know, and what you don't know. So you have to step back and think about your assumptions and learn. And then there's the question of finding the focus, which for any aspiring, any emergent business is a big issue. How do you work and find the focus together? There's a question in the chat. I'll read it around. Let me see here. It's the a vision statement explains why a company exists. The question is, how do you see the difference talking about the vision, using it in the strategy work in big corporation or in a startup? Wonderful question, because you both can actually compare. Who wants to start? Using vision.
Ilkka didn't start, so I'm forced.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So in practice, I have to say that it was pretty similar. That when you're actually, it's vision statement is in the beginning. It's kind of the direction where you want to move to, and it kind of brings people to around the same table as well. So I think that in the beginning as well, we were kind of a little missing that actually. And then when it was brought to the table, we were actually like, oh, now we understand what we're talking about, and now we understand where we're heading to, and now we can start to build the steps towards that direction, so to say. So I have to say that there is a lot of similarities then, and personally when I'm working on innovation ideas in the corporate environment as well, we always start from the vision actually, and we even do visions together with our customers so that we have a common understanding where we're heading to. So.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I agree with Etti's points, and of course easier to align with the vision if you have 10 people than if you have 10,000 people or even more at KONE. But I think the fundamentals are still the same, that you need to have an kind of an innovative and inspiring vision that the people aim at the same target and see that what we're trying to achieve. Because if you don't have that, then you can end up going for really different directions, which don't really kind of fit the purpose.
This is something we hear a lot in a way that it's lots of our community members talk about how working with a startup or working with an advisory board from the startup's point of view forces you to think the fundamentals very carefully and negotiate and interrogate them is the word, I think, to see how do you do. We asked you beforehand about your top 3 takeaways from the journey. Would you, Etti, like to start? What were your 3 top? And while you're doing it to the audience, please ask questions. This is your chance to ask Ilkka and Etti.
Yeah, one of the key things that throughout the year is that the change is constant and it's evident as well. So you can't avoid it. You need to get used to it and not fight against it. So you're using your energy for a wrong source. If you're fighting against it, it's much more easier actually to just go with the flow and enjoy the change, so to say, and then kind of being prepared for the fact that things will change as well. So it just makes things easier when you have that mindset just to start with. Then another thing that you can't avoid collidations. So there will be a bumpy ride ahead So that as well can be expected. Things, as I mentioned, will change, but there will be also points when you don't kind of understand what's going on in the startup and you're confused. You don't understand what was the point that's being raised. You might need to throw yourself out there, give a comment that no one else agrees to, for example, and that's fine as well, because that's exactly what is expected as well. You have to be brutally honest to yourself and for the others. You need to have empathy for the others as well. So it's a pumpy ride. I think that describes it quite well. And then one key thing for me throughout the year and the year before as well has been that getting to know so many great people, so that I would have never met the advisory board members, for example, in an event in such a deep level that I then actually got to know through the year in the advisory board, and then also the startup. So we're definitely going to say hi when we meet, and we're agreed that even though we didn't, for example, have a chance to go and see the startups production facilities, we might organize that in the future whenever that is possible. But great people throughout the year, both on the advisory board side and then also on the startup side.
Thank you, Etti. Ilkka.
Good. Yeah, I'll start from the learning thing that I think the corporations have a lot to learn from the startups, of course, vice versa as well. But for the corporate perspective of the agility that the startups are able to change their path, and so that's amazing. And it's but I think in innovativeness and determination kind of things are as well those that where you can learn from a corporation that the startups need to make quick decisions and move forward. And then as Etti mentioned as well, I think the journey is a truly fascinating one, and it really gives you a lot, but it requires that you're ready to invest the time in it, and be active and challenge yourself, the other advisors and the startup as well. That if you just feel hanging around there, that you don't get that much. But if you go deep into that, then it's a really good one. And as a third one, learning from our startup, I would say that the world and the startup you advise, that may look totally different after the year. So you really don't know which ship you came along when you started the journey. And you need to remember to be open-minded to understand that and ask for solid arguments for everything the startup does. And everything people say in the meetings, that it's especially during the first years of a startups, the course can change pretty quickly. So you can't assume that the thing they're doing now is actually the one that will be the successful part in the coming years.
Mm-hmm. That's true. I mean, we all remember Steve Blank's wonderful definition for a startup, which goes that a startup is a temporary organization searching for successful, scalable business model. So the startup is all about learning, and it may or may not be the first thing that they are working on, the second thing, or anything, as you've seen. To Etti's bumpy ride, yes, we love to talk about that the startup entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. It's like, you know, in an amusement park. It can be a rough ride, and we've been very happy to have you guys to work with two wonderful, or three in case of Etti, altogether three wonderful startups, and with ourselves as well. Ilkka's point about determination is something, you know, in a big company, a project is a project. In a startup, that next pitch next week can be life or death. So it is different in that, and it sort of sharpens your senses if you like. Any other questions from the audience? Let me see. What would you guys like to ask from Etti and Ilkka? There are tons to tell. If not, I have one while you guys are thinking about your questions. What would be your advice to the next program participants who will join our community? What would be your top advice for the people who are starting?
I would say that be really, really open-minded and kind of willing to learn, but also to put yourself out there because you don't know what you don't know, but sometimes you forget what you know as well. So and what you can actually bring to the table, because there's plenty that everybody can bring to the table. So it's actually now reflecting back to the year, there was plenty of things that you could actually comment or advise and bring a perspective that is totally out of the box. So having the courage to say your thoughts and opinions as well. So
this is very interesting. Yes, you have to be open for learning and sort of push it learning, but lots of you guys actually talk about how working the whole startup, where you have all the functions and everything, you start to recognize that you have skills you've forgotten or you haven't realized that you actually have. All of you have broader skills than you think. Ilkka, what would be your advice to the next round?
I agree with Etti's advice, but I would say just to investment the time and energy that it requires, that you don't get much out of it if you're not all in during the meetings, and so don't try to do, especially during the virtual meetings, don't try to do 3 things at the same time, but just focus on the learning and be yourself.
Pirita, you had a question. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. Unfortunately, my chat doesn't work, so I have to ask it live.
Sorry about that.
It's our system. So I've been sitting in a couple of advisory boards as well, and I always found it funny the way people have the kind of the balance between advising and coaching. So how do you feel about this? How do you kind of balance between it, and how to make it efficient without kind of too much driving the company?
I would say that's a really good question, and I would say actually the coaching could be a better word for quite many of those meetings. That it is definitely not something that the startups are looking for clear answers from you, that you really know that, okay, we as an advisory board say that you should do thing 1 and not the thing 2. It's more like that people bring in their insights, and of course the entrepreneurs need to do their kind of own conclusions out of those.
Good question.
I have to agree. So the responsibility to make decisions whether the topic is which direction it will move is on the startup side anyway. So in that sense, coaching is really common, and then it might be that the startup brings a problem in front of the advisory board, and then we're even then just coaching. We're not solving the problem there. We're bringing tools for them to use, and then when they come to the next advisory board, they've already found a solution. It might be totally different than what were discussed, for example, in the previous one. So we were actually just throwing ideas, or have you tried this one, or I had an example case, for example, or this is how we solved it, or then somebody can share a PowerPoint suddenly from like, so that's basically how the meetings are. I don't know what is the right balance. I just threw myself out there for the situations, and I tried to add value to the discussion. So I think it's not actually necessary what's the balance. It's just that adding value, whatever is the way that you can.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like with the focus. I mean, finding the balance is part of the exercise, and it's a real exercise for the startup as well. Because how do you work the advisory board and your advisors? The startup needs all the external resources it can get, basically. There's a wonderful question from Brown about what were the takeaways for your own big organization from the journey. What do you think you brought back to KONE, all 60,000 of you, or VR?
Yeah, well, actually, there are quite plenty of us here. I'm not the first one. But I think it's the fact that small things can make big change as well. So there needs to be one who takes the lead, or then even in a meeting that you can suggest things that are really out from the box. So having that courage. And I have to say, one of the key things were as well that structuring the meetings. So that's relatively surprising learning that I'm able to bring back to a corporate environment, is that you have, for example, for meetings pre-assignment. So people are more on the same table when you're actually then having the meeting. Also, the fact that Ilkka has been mentioning a few times that don't do other things during the meeting. So there are little things that you can just straight away embed that you're actually doing in your current work versus then in the advisory board. So this virtual environment, kind of appreciating everybody's time, because that's valuable. So that is one key learning. And then I was advising a sustainability startup. So also in that sense that when I was mentioning that small things can change the big whole. So kind of bringing those thoughts into the organization as well. And obviously then I've been just, even before I came to this meeting, I was talking with few of the alumni outside as well about the journey. And so
yeah, you have actually at KONE, you have a small growing internal community of EEXers.
Yeah.
You have a bunch of people you can rely about innovation and stuff.
Yes.
Ilkka, what do you think about you? Very different company.
Yeah, I would say like the courage to fail fast is one of the key learnings that as we already discussed about the pivoting the business kind of things, that I think we have actually done that a lot during the COVID times, that we have introduced a lot of new services and products and so on. Some of them succeed and some of them not, and then you need to be able to fail fast. But I think especially during this kind of turbulent times that the world is changing really, really rapidly, that you need to have the courage to try different things, and if it doesn't seem to succeed, then you need to fail fast and try about the next one. I think that's one of the key takeaways here.
And there's also underlying learning here. We're running out of time, but maybe worth of highlighting is that this failing fast, being open, and taking the lead, the things you just mentioned, they're the stuff that lots of people talk about, and there's lots of talk about them. But in a startup, you will have to face them, and the startup entrepreneurs will actually do it, and you will help them to figure out what to do, and then they either succeed or the company dies. Thanks a lot for both of you. We are running out of time. Wonderful to discuss you. I really look forward for seeing you in some of our community alumni events. We're planning a big one for the probably now in the fall, maybe in the virtual format, but then in the spring, a real meeting where we can all meet. Thanks a lot, Etti and Ilkka, on behalf of all of us. Wonderful to have you here this morning. To our great audience, great to have you this morning. We are now focusing helping sustainable startups. So higher stakes ever. And if you or your colleagues need a dose of entrepreneurship, or your boss for that matter, please send them our way. Welcome on board and join Etti and Ilkka and the others in the community of best future change makers.